The following episode of Humble and Fred Radio is brought to you by FYI Music News, The Retirement Sherpa, Gig Sky, The Chambers Plan, Palma Pasta, and CDN Technologies. If you'd like to talk to Humble and Fred, email us at humbleandfred@humbleandfredradio.com. And now from the worldwide headquarters of the Humble and Fred Show, here are Humble and Fred.
All right, for all you old 102.1 people, here's a little chalk circle to start the 1st of April on the Humble and Fred Show. That's right. Making memories one day at a time.
Yeah, and won't these be memories?
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking of that yesterday. 5-6 years from now, we'll be looking back. Remember that? Remember this? Remember that part? Do you remember this part?
Well, before I answer, do you remember this song? Chalk
yes.
Circles, April. Now, I don't. The funny thing is, a few people were talking about it on Twitter, and Mike Boone, Toronto Mike, who is going to check in here in a second, he said, you guys should start the show with this. I'm like, absolutely. But I'll be honest with you, I can't remember if this was a UNI song or a UNCFNY song.
No, I think that predates you. I'm not. Again, don't hold me to that stuff, but I think that's prior to 89. You can always Google it and find out.
Yeah, Phil, hey, Phil.
Yes.
Phil, do some research.
1986.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to have everyone here on the program today. As I mentioned, Toronto Michael's check-in. He fell apparently, and from what I can see on the emails, looks like he broke his wrist.
Yeah, he did. I was talking to him yesterday. I'll let him tell the story, but he was riding along and something got in front of him and he went flying off his bike. He actually broke his helmet.
Wow.
And then had to have a CAT scan.
Really?
On top of everything else. But that's all I'll tell you. I'll let him tell the story.
All right. Also on the show, Dan Duran, and the Dan Duran weather contest continues. Literally, the entries are, well, they're overwhelming. We'll talk about that. As well on the show today, making his regular monthly appearance. And if you were looking at Twitter as well, you'll see a lot of people anticipating the return of Richard Surrett. And now it's pretty much taken, we all understand Richard's point of view, big Trump supporter. People seem to have caught wind of that on Twitter, and now they're hoping that he'll be able to explain Trump at 8 o'clock Eastern.
Does he know? Does he know that's the basis of his visit today?
I think he's listen. I'm looking at what Richard tweeted back to a few of these people. Here's a typical tweet. I cannot wait to hear the stable conspiracy genius tell us what is really happening out there. And Richard replied, "God bless." So I think he understands.
Okay, because often, depending on what soapbox you're screaming from. Sometimes you can't win, and I'm just wondering in this forum whether he can win. Like, you know what I mean? No matter what he says, is anyone going to accept it? But we'll see.
Yeah, it's great. I don't know. Is it a great point? Yeah. I don't know if it's about winning or losing with Richard. I said to you prior to his appearance, I like the guy, and I think he's an interesting character, and we don't have to always have people on the show that agree with our point of view.
No, without a doubt. On the contrary, I'd much prefer that because, again, that's another thing that really bothers me about American talk radio on both sides, because there's even progressive radio stations that, they don't take calls from dissenters.
Yeah.
They just take calls from people that reinforce what they're saying.
And I don't know I don't know what people's expectations are. Some great showdown between, us and Richard. But really, it's just a chance for us to have a thoughtful conversation with a guy who also thinks deeply about these things, and he'll have his own perspective.
Well, and it's interesting. What you always have to investigate is where those feelings come from. Obviously, we're not all the same. We don't all have the same beliefs or values. So you can't tell someone else how to think. You can question it, but...
Well, yeah, and it's like my older brother's phrase he taught me on the weekend. It's not seeing is believing. Believing is seeing. And Richard has different beliefs than us, but I tell you what, the guy's produced a lot of talk radio, and it'll be some good talk radio at 8 o'clock Eastern. Also, the Retirement Sherpa is thinking deeply about the markets and helping to advise people. He'll be with us around 7:45. And, of course, Dan Duran's weather. Phil Hong is hunkered down in his Woodbridge bunker.
Well, I was out yesterday, so I'm not really hunkered, but bunkered.
So so you're not hunkered down in Woodbridge? I'm looking at a picture of you on the screen in the basement.
Yeah. Well, there's 7 cases outside right now in Woodbridge, so you got to be careful.
Is there?
Mm-hmm. It's linked to a community center.
Okay, let me try again. Phil's in Woodbridge. Is that true?
Yes.
And you went outside yesterday. Good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Phil's contribution to the show seems to be lessening. He seems to be less interested while he's on the Zoom camera than when he's here.
Yeah. Usually by now he's making screeching noises.
Yeah.
I
said to you before the show, yesterday was just another gray, rainy, bit of a chill in the air, and in the end, I really was only out of the house for about 45 minutes. How about you?
I was out quite a bit yesterday. I went to Costco, did a Costco run, which was, I was very concerned before going, but they're right on top of it, I'll tell you that.
Are they really?
Single file going in, only so many people allowed in at one time. I wore a mask. Yes, I did. Although, man, I'll tell you, I feel bad for those hospital workers, man. You got to wear those things all day. Like sometimes they have to wear them, outside of coronavirus,
Mm-hmm. Now, where did you get the mask? Was it like a drywall mask?
No, my father-in-law has them. Has some.
Right.
So he had given us a couple.
I ordered a couple actually yesterday.
Yeah, he suffers with... Oh, did you? He suffers, with kidney disease. So sometimes when he goes out certain places, he has to wear a mask. Because he's vulnerable, obviously. I wore it. They're hard to talk through. They're hard to breathe through. I found it a bit annoying. And then I'm reading this morning that Dr. Tam, is that the Canadian medical officer or whatever? She seems to think they're not even not necessary, but you shouldn't wear them for some reason. I'll have to read that article.
No, I saw the headline of that as well. I mean, from what we talked about yesterday with the Czech Republic and other people who, and I said this, Phil, in China, the culture has already been used to wearing masks.
Yeah, we find it weird that people would want to do that because it makes them look kind of odd. But when you're sick, you have to be respectful to other people.
Right. And I said that to Rachel. I said when these masks come, and thanks to Sal, our buddy Sal Nicitra, who turned me onto this site, but they're pretty heavy duty masks with some replacement filters. But like I said yesterday, at some point we're all going to go back outside, and for me, I think for some safety for a while, I want to wear one.
When? Like over the next few weeks, you mean?
Well, certainly the next few weeks, but at some point, when we transition to getting out of our houses again, I think you're going to see a lot of people wearing masks more often.
I saw the same thing about gloves, right? As long as you don't touch your face, you might be better off without a glove, because where do those gloves go and what you do with them, where you lay them, what else do they touch? You're almost better having bare hands in a situation like that, and then immediately washing your hands after leaving a store or whatever, rather than having the virus, which apparently could survive on a glove. And so what do you do? Spray down the gloves then, or do you throw them away? And apparently the surgical gloves aren't the best way to go. Like, who knows what to believe? Anyway.
Well, I heard that too, and that's it's an overload of information. But the thing that again, I think it's a personal choice. Like, what makes the most sense to me is to lessen the amount of aerosol-borne germs we're all exchanging. Even if you cut it down a little bit, it's better than nothing.
Yes, but you just never know, eh? Did you see the story Chris Cuomo has? He has the virus.
Yeah, that's Cuomo's brother, right?
Yeah, Chris Cuomo from CNN.
But yeah, I'm saying he's Andrew Cuomo's brother.
Oh, yeah. Have you not seen when he has his brother on? It's quite funny. They cut each other.
No, I know.
It's sweet. Two brothers taking shots at each other. And on that point, Andrew Cuomo, there's this growing charge to get him to replace Biden. But yesterday he said he has no interest. But of course, what else is he going to say right now? He's right in the middle of a crisis. He's not going to start talking about that.
Well, Fred, can you imagine a politician in the middle of a crisis like this actually campaigning at the same time?
I know.
What would that, how unseemly would that be?
But you look at a guy like Chris Cuomo, you think, I assume he's been doing his segments or his show from home. You just wonder how he got it, because a lot of these big radio and TV stars, they're keeping them. I mean, a lot of the people they work for are insisting that they self-isolate because they need them on the air. They don't need them sick. So it just goes to show you, if you're susceptible, it'll get you.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you never know exactly when it's going to get you or how it got you or at what, particular moment. But that's another thing I saw too. Like, I think it was in Iceland. They've determined that 50% of the cases, people get it, recover from it without even knowing they have it. Yet while they have it, they're very contagious.
Yeah.
How ugly is that? How ugly is that? Wow. It all depends, I guess, on your own makeup. But to have it and lose it, never know it, yet spread it. It's like some weird movie.
Well, I mean, that's the thing about novel coronavirus size, is that they're novel in the way they move through a herd. If you look at Iceland, it's such a tiny country. If you're one of the things we're all following, I'm sure by now everyone's on some kind of coronavirus counter. Go through the countries. And Iceland, which is really, I think, no more than 500,000 people. They have 3,000. I'm sorry, that's Ireland. Where's Iceland? They have only a few cases, but in the per capita category, they're huge. Oh, here we go. No, it's Ireland again. Phil.
1,135 confirmed cases in Iceland, 2 deaths.
Thank you, Phil. But did you see the per capita thing? It's absurd.
What is it?
I don't know. Because, of course, there we go. 1,135. But their total cases per 1 million population is 3,326. It's the highest in the world, or close to the highest in the world, along with Luxembourg, another small country. The point being, if you're in Iceland, you actually have a higher chance of getting it, statistically, than almost anywhere else in the world.
Wow. Why?
Well, because there's Dan Duran. It's just a tiny, tiny place. Well, you think about it.
Yes.
If you live in a country where, you're in close quarters, 350,000 people live in Reykjavik, which is the biggest city and the most metro area. Dan Duran, speaking of metro areas, in Peterborough, Ontario, very busy yesterday. And Dan.
Yes.
I know you sent me a note again that you had no time to put together the Dan Duran jingle, but don't beat yourself up. No one else is interested in it either. No one else gives a crap.
Oh,
These are no.
We must encourage people to sit down at their computers when they've got some little extra time now to learn how to use a recording program and go ahead and make it happen.
Let's just review, Fred. We had an idea for a contest. Do your version of the Dan Duran song. You get to be on the Zoom call or whatever with us during a show. Literally so little interest that the guy who the song's about himself wants nothing to do with it. That, my friend, is a contest failure.
Yeah, very sad. Very sad.
I did make a contribution, and then that it just wasn't good enough. And now I'm in on the contribution, but like month end was yesterday. There's a few things that are going on in the world. I had to take a help call yesterday.
Yes, you did.
A what?
A help
call from a technical help call from a certain
I had a
friend
technical
of mine.
question for him, and he and Colton troubleshot the thing for me on my. I'm trying to get my computer to mirror the monitor on the television. And Dan,
I have so much empathy for those people that those helplines for technology that they have to walk you through problems, because it's a difficult thing when you can't see what's going on. Mm-hmm. We finally had to Zoom, I don't know, what would you, WhatsApp or something to like FaceTime it to see what Howard was doing in order for me to help him get to where we would get in no time normally.
What were you doing, Howard? You were trying to get what?
I was trying to take an HDMI feed from my computer into my television, and there's 3 different settings. There's HDMI 1, 2, and TV. But the thing was, I couldn't, because of the way the Mac works, I couldn't get the screen from the Mac. Dan had to show me how to drag the computer screen onto the big screen, because it's not really intuitive. I mean, I got to the point, that's why I called you, because I got to the point where I exhausted all my own ideas. But anyway, the fact is Dan did walk me through it. And if that prevented you from doing another version of the Dan Duran song, I certainly appreciate it.
All right.
All right?
All right.
All right.
I'll be working on it later today.
I don't think you will.
With my Mac, with my Mac, it's very simple. I bought this cord. You put it in the side of the Mac. You plug it into an HDMI in the back of the TV, and presto, it's there.
Yeah.
That's basically what he did. But
that's what I did. Except the small screen and the big screen, I couldn't. Like my Mac showed up. My Mac showed up on the television, but it showed up in another screensaver. It's actually more complicated. It's more complicated explaining it.
It's an extension of the screen as opposed to mirroring what's on your computer screen, right, which you can have either. But like like you working on your computer and you throw something up on the other monitor, basically.
Right.
Like 2 monitor people have this down, but he didn't actually realize that he had it working.
Yeah.
So
I actually had it
working,
working.
But he didn't realize it.
Well, here's what I know: the Dan Duran weather song is playing right now.
Weather Dan Duran, Dan Duran weather. Weather Dan Duran, Dan Duran weather, weather Dan Duran, Dan Duran weather, weather Dan Duran.
It's like listening to Coffee House, Hey, man.
I curved some of the notes from the original tune just for that.
Man. I dug it. I dig it. And I was looking at the forecast because yesterday was so wildly depressing. Just give me any hope, Dan. The 1st of April is here.
And what a great sunny day it is. It's going to be a really nice 10-degree day for most people who are in the region. So 10 to 12 degrees is what we're expecting for the most part for the next bunch of days, all the way into the weekend, as a matter of fact, maybe Monday. There's no real rain in the forecast until Saturday night. Not looking like a lot of rain. This is more of a drizzly kind of thing. 60% chance of showers both on Saturday night into Sunday. When that drops down a little bit throughout the day, could get a shower or 2, and that'll happen into Monday as well. However, the temperatures, depending where you are, it's really close to seasonal right now, which the seasonal temperature has gone up. For Toronto, it's 9 degrees for the high and 0 for the low. And that a little bit cooler overnight in Hamilton and areas further north. So it's looking great. So we've got a mainly sunny day tomorrow, mainly sunny, a mix of sun and cloud on Friday, sunshine on Saturday, it looks like at this point. So it'll be pulling out of your doldrums
That's nice.
for the most part. for the next little while. A little bit of wind tomorrow is what you can find as well. But you know, who
I
cares?
just hope other people in Hamilton and Toronto, I hope they don't hear Dan Duran on our show and then pluck him away from us, Fred, because that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah. You know,
Fred's not seeing it
No.
for the next while.
I so want Dan on the Weather Network, and depending on his shift, maybe he could do this and then that. You know what I'm saying?
Now, you know what's going to happen. The Weather Network's going to pluck Dan out into prime time, and they'll say, listen, we want to hire you, but our reputation, we can't have you on that show anymore.
Here's what I can't believe. It's like, really, it's of weathermen. It's like Tom Brady being out there in free agency like he was, and nobody signs him. Dan Duran, the weatherman, is available. How the Weather Network isn't all over that, I just do not know. Think about it.
I'm thinking about it. Yes. Well, I will. I'll call him again today and see what's going on. Really. Everybody's doing stuff at home now, right?
What an acquisition.
Yeah.
Well,
you could get a big green blanket, put it up on the wall, and do green screen forecasts from your foyer.
I've got a room that I could easily do that in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be pretty awesome.
Listen, man, we appreciate you doing what you do for us and then through us for so many.
Thank you. That was very well said. I should write that down.
I just made it up.
Card.
Literally, I could, honestly, right now, I could not have told you what I just said.
It was so in the moment.
Oh, no. I just, that's how old I am. Hey,
I see.
Dan, before I let you go, are you watching anything? Yeah. Is there something that you might want to pass on? I'm up to episode 6 of Ozark. Yeah, I'm sticking with it.
Oh, are you? I finished it up.
You did?
I did, yeah. I finished up.
Does it get better?
Oh, not Ozark. I'm sorry, the cat one. Ozark, I haven't dived back in yet.
Tiger King.
Tiger King, yeah. Tiger King I finished up. You finished that one?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I was first to Tiger King.
I think Delise and I started watching something recommended by my son last night, The Outsider. Jason Bateman as well. Really weird. Interesting. 2 episodes. Delise doesn't know if she wants to continue because it's sort of creepy. It gives her the creeps.
Isn't that a Stephen King?
Yes.
He's
guy two places at once. The guy who's in 2 places at once. But I was easily swayed to that, Howard, because of what you're saying. I watched the first 2 episodes of Ozark, and I didn't do it for me. Now, again, on the heels of Tiger King, anything's going to seem flat, right? I mean, really.
Yeah, I think we talked about that. I wish I hadn't seen Tiger King first because it was so bizarre that when you go back to Ozark, which was kind of bizarre, like I said to Rachel last night, we're up to episode 5 and 6 because it's just enough to kind of keep you somewhat engaged. But I will say this, for the first time in a few weeks, I got a little medicated and made Ozark way better.
Oh, did it?
Oh, yeah. Way better.
Maybe I should try that.
You should really try that because it made it funnier and more fun. But the is The Outsiders a Netflix or a Plex or where do we find that?
HBO through Crave.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
All right.
I spent a little time watching. What was the? I mean, I watched a movie or two once in a while, but yesterday I did a tour through YouTube looking for those pastors. We were talking about the pastors yesterday who were arrested for violating bans on large gatherings.
Yes.
So there's the Florida pastor, so I checked him out, and then there's the other one in Louisiana. I can't remember his name, but I did look him up and saw some footage of him preaching. And he's one of those preachers that, talks normal for a while and then gets sort of ramped up and then ends every word with a yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
When they get to
it's a style.
The Lord says, and he starts to singing, and it's like a to watch. Anyway, so that was entertaining for me.
It is entertaining. Very entertaining.
Then you
scary, but entertaining.
Oh, it's scary. And those guys are terrified that, the collection plates will stop. That's what they're terrified of. Unbelievable.
All right,
And
Dan.
they do. You can donate online if you need to.
Well, of course.
You can attend
they
church.
they
So.
they digitized years ago, Fred. Trust me. All right, Dan
Really?
Duran is available for all your weather needs. We certainly
Absolutely.
appreciate you. We appreciate you hanging out with us, and thanks for the help from you and Colton yesterday. I appreciate it.
It was a little fun. It was a little fun. Yeah.
All right, man.
Okay. All right.
There's Dan Duran.
Although I saw a couple of those clips yesterday, looking at that congregation, I'm not sure they're running home and doing it online, to be honest.
No, that's a good point.
There's something else, man. Wow.
We'll come back. We have sun shining in most of southern Ontario today. And the 1st of April, another 30 days to flatten the curve. We'll see what happens in the next month. Hopefully, you and your family are staying healthy and well. And we'll come back. It's Humble and Fred Radio. It's Humble and Fred Radio. You know how we do this. It's good to have you along on the 1st of April. Seemed that March lasted a very long time.
Yes, it did. 31 days, Howard. 31 days.
Seemed longer.
Like 60. As you said, seemed like 61.
Tim Niblett coming up. We'll talk markets and try and make sense out of what's happening in the time of the virus. But I can tell you, these people at GigSky are doing what they can to make our lives a little bit better.
You know, at GigSky, they care about the safety of their customers, international partners, and global workforce. And for those that are displaced from home, GigSky doing all they can within their capacity to minimize the stress associated with being away during this pandemic. With that in mind, GigSky is offering a discount for anyone needing that extra bit of data while hunkering down at home or still on the road. Go to gigsky.com or humbleandfredradio.com and click on the GigSky badge and enter the code FREE10 at checkout. And you'll get a deal on some extra data. And it's a great gesture by our friends at GigSky.
Our friends at Clear Air Solutions, KJ Preston, will be with us tomorrow talking about what he normally does and what he's been doing a lot of lately. And besides doing asbestos, ventilation, mold remediation, and the such, they are also certified AEGIS, AEGIS applicators. And we've been talking about this a lot lately. A lot of people are concerned about disinfecting their homes and workspaces, which are now one and the same. What it basically does, though, is it's applied to surfaces to sort of reset the disinfectant level of your home. You know, I've been reading this now for a couple of weeks. I'm being honest with you, I'm not sure I really understand it, except to say that a lot of companies, in fact, a few that have heard us talking about it, are using it to disinfect their workspaces, their areas. The town of Coburg, I mentioned, a few others have jumped on this. Find out more at clearairsolutions.com. Clear Air Solutions to help make your workspace and your home a bit safer. I think the people at Metrolinx have been using this technology for all the buses and trains. You know, speaking of which, you know, we've talked a lot about the scenes from all around the world, whether it's Fifth Avenue in New York or, you know, downtown wherever. But, you know, here in Toronto, I still see buses, you know, on the Queensway and the TTC, and they're all running. But I just wonder, you know, they have to be at very light capacity. And who are the people still using transit?
Well, people that are still working, but they're trying to do the social distancing on the buses by only allowing so many on. I saw a report on this last night, and some of the drivers now they're a little concerned about the system and their proximity to some of the passengers. So it's something that the TTC union is dealing with right now. But yeah, they're only allowing so many people on, and I think every other seat or something, they have some program worked out, which seems to be working all right, based on the workforce has been depleted.
Mm-hmm.
But still, in some times of rush hour, what remains of rush hour, some of the drivers are a little uncomfortable with the number of people that are allowed on the bus. But that's something they're working through with the union and the city, I guess.
Now, I can see that. I mean, if you're in one of those essential services, you're still a person. You're still, like the rest of us, nervous about the contact you have with other people. To that point, Fred, the city of Brampton has gotten tough with those who continue. Was it you that were saying that somebody went to a playground and took off all the tape?
Well, in Peel, Brampton in particular, you know, there's a playground right in front of me. It has not been taped off, but they've put signs up, and people are obeying those signs in my neighborhood. I mean, that's my first point of reference. I've seen nobody on that playground, and it's just signs. There's no yellow tape around it. But I know that was a problem in Toronto because John Tory was really pissed off.
Yeah.
The day before yesterday, because people were just literally taking the tape down and taking their kids on the whatever you call them.
Well, they're getting serious about it. Where I take Stan for our little golf walk, this huge park that's basically empty most days, they have taped off all the kids' swings and play area. But in Brampton, they're getting serious. They're enacting bylaws to enforce physical distancing that carry a fine between $500 to $100,000.
100,000.
Yes, I know, man.
Well, that's a deterrent.
I'd say.
Well, even I saw on the news last night in Toronto, they issued a bunch of $750 tickets yesterday to people that were not social distancing or doing things they shouldn't have. And I thought, wow, $750 is a pretty good nick, but 100,000.
No, I don't.
Wow.
I'm looking at the article. It doesn't give me any details as to what constitutes a $100,000 fine. But I bring it up because I just wanted to have a small discussion about the herd mentality and how human nature sort of shows up. And I said this early on. If you ever really want to know what people are like, watch them under pressure. But I find it fascinating, and I wonder if you do as well, how just some people, people that we know, are doing what we're told. And some people go, well, I won't, that's not for me. And that's fine if you want to live your life in a shadowy manner. But in this particular case, and maybe for the first time that I can recall, your behavior flaunting regulations impacts me.
Right. I agree.
Your brother used to call you, what do you have a name for you about? Because you were always like,
Susie.
Because you were always doing, the right thing. Cleaning up, at your home. Yes. And your brother used to kid you all the time. Now that's, and some people are like that. Some people do what we're told. And some people need to have a $100,000 fine or they won't stop breaking the rules because it's now affecting us.
Well, I was at Costco yesterday. It's funny how some people carry themselves. You just know they're not totally into it. Yeah, I'll line up and yeah, I got to do this. But you can just see that they don't think it's necessary. The look on their face. And in a situation like Costco, you have to or you're not going in. And there's different levels of that too. They say this, especially as we really get into this thing, and probably more in the United States, but who knows? It'll bring out the best in people. It'll bring out the worst in people. And that's still a bit down the road, the worst in people. If this thing gets, if we get desperate, or there's certain areas of the country or certain people that get desperate for money, food, and what have you.
Well, I think we're already seeing the best and worst, but I know what you mean. Like, have you heard of this term, preppers? Have you heard that term?
No.
Those are people preparing for the end of the world. The preppers, they're all these people that for years have thought, I'm going to make sure I've got my bunker stocked in case the government comes for my guns. Well, those people have gone, hog wild, as we say, preparing and stockpiling stuff for an inevitable breakdown in societal whatever,
Well, almost immediately out of the gate, right? What was one of the first things in the United States that was hard to get were bullets and guns. I don't think we've had that problem in Canada. I mean, guns are harder to get, obviously, but I don't think that's top of mind for a lot of Canadians. And again, that's the worst in people. So, if things do get desperate, say worst case scenario, the supply chain is cut off for whatever reason, there are going to be those that are going to share and look after each other. And there are going to be those that just, turn their houses into fortresses and maybe go out and get what they want.
People online bartering toilet paper, Phil. I'll trade you a piece of toilet paper for some dumplings.
It's like Thunderdome 2020.
That's right. But it is interesting, Brampton having to enact those kind of bylaws. John Tory getting angry here in Toronto. And as you say, some people will do this because it's the right thing to do for everyone.
Well, yesterday, Tory, and again, this doesn't apply to private events, but there will be no public event in Toronto before June 30th. They've called off Pride Parade already, but any like big gathering that's sanctioned by the city, they don't want to look at it, hear about it, okay it or anything until after June 30th. Now, again, Leafs, Raptors, Blue Jays, they're exempt from this, obviously, because they're not owned by the city. But I'm sure that pressure on the sports teams to be good citizens, you're not looking at anything like that until July.
I don't.
So swallow that.
Yeah, I don't think sports is coming back for a while. Tomorrow on the show, Bob Weeks will be here. He's the editor of Score Golf Magazine, Score Golf TV. Very bright guy, around the game for a long time as a broadcaster, as a player. And he'll talk about what golf's, doing. Because a lot of people thought, oh, no big deal, we can just go outside and go golfing. But they're, I have an article my brother sent me from Phoenix, where I was last month, and they're still golfing to a degree. I mean, they've made a bunch of, modifications in terms of the booking and all the interaction. But I'm not sure what we're going to do here in Canada because, part of it is to get everyone outside is maybe a healthy thing to do, but also how do you control people?
There are states still where restaurants are open. So
are there really?
Oh yeah. The thing is, they say almost 80% of Americans.
Yeah, it's 3 out of 4.
Yeah, it's stay-at-home orders, but that other quarter and all your, the non-populated or the less populated states they think like that's going on in another world. It doesn't apply to them. So there's pockets where it's just business as usual.
Well, all you can do is hope that they're safe because of the fact that there's not very many of them, but that's not the case.
Yeah, but eventually it'll find its way there.
Yeah, of course. And ironically, they're the least prepared to handle it.
Yep.
All right, let me bring in this music. Everybody knows when you play the music. Hang on. Each and every week we get a chance to hang out with our friend Tim Niblett. Professor Nibblesworth, having just undergone pacemaker surgery, is back in his home office in beautiful Burlington. And I think we've got his mic working now. Hey, Tim.
Good morning. I think with Fred's help, we got it all figured out there.
Well, I'm used to that style of mic. And what a difference. Boy, you certainly were blessed with a lovely voice, Tim. Mm-hmm.
Why, thank you. My heart, not so much, but at least I got the dulcet tones, so that's good.
Tim Niblett, Howard Glassman here. How are you?
Very, very fine, doctor. How about yourself?
As a junior cardiologist, I'm concerned with your pacemaker surgery. And let's start with that, because I know a lot of our friends and supporters that know you from the show have asked us after your ticker. How do you feel?
Real good, thanks. Real good. Trying to get out and wander around with or without the dog every once in a while, too. And went for my checkup on Monday. I've had tons of people reach out, which has really been appreciated and great via email, via Facebook. As you know, lots are clients, and they've been gracious as well. So, yeah, the German engineering is working just fine in there.
That's right. Was it German engineering? Because they know what they're doing.
It is. It is a Biotronic, and they were in there Monday checking everything out, lowering my pulse, seeing what happened, measuring what had occurred, and pretty fascinating stuff.
Can you feel it initially?
No, not at all. Not at all. No.
So you would you wouldn't know if it's the on switch is on or off, right?
No.
Wow.
No. Sadly, I can't do any arc welding or jackhammering or vacuuming, so I got to watch those things.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that. Are there any? Well, you just mentioned some activities. Are there some places you can't go? Like if you go through an airport, you have to tell them I have a pacemaker. You can't wand me there or something.
I think it can be wanted okay. I got to reread that section, but we have to carry a card around all the time that says we have one, and even the number and the make and all that stuff. Because different ones, if you're trying to measure things, I guess it's like you can't use a BMW thing on a Chrysler, right? So, yeah, we got to carry that everywhere we go.
All right. Well, Tim Niblett is a portfolio manager. You are not. Raymond James, and a member of the Canadian Securities Investment.
Please.
Thank you. I'm looking at the note you sent both of us and Phil about, we were talking about some of the things that have happened in the past, and this gives, if you can, it's a long email, but maybe summarize some of the things you've learned and maybe some of the things that can comfort people as they're listening today.
Yeah, I just wanted to try to get across to the listeners more. I've said even when you're not doing anything, there's a lot going under the surface, right? And of course, during times like this, fund managers, ETF rule makers really add value to things because your statement might look the same. And of course, the price goes up and down by the day, but they're just repositioning things. They're checking what the bank cuts are going to do. They've already proactively done things prior to it. They're tracking what happened in similar situations and what worked during those and what didn't. They're doing 1,000 things you don't even know that they're doing.
So today, after President Trump's news conference yesterday, where he seems to have, admitted that this is a lot worse than he ever thought it was, they expect the markets to plunge again today. So what are all those guys doing? What are those people doing? Like, how do you prepare? What do you do? Like, what? It seems so helpless.
Well, for one, Fred, we don't use the word plunge.
Okay, no plunge. Okay.
I remember in retail back in the day, if sales were hard, down on previous year goals, budgets, whatever, we would say they're soft. So yes, we're anticipating a soft day in the market today.
So if you don't use the word plunge, you also don't use the phrase going down the crapper. Is that also? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, crisis. We like to not use crisis.
That's right. Yeah. I bet you there's a list of words that portfolio managers are not allowed to use.
We have to take Semantics 101
yes.
and Semantics 201 are
That's
definitely encouraged.
Well,
what do they do during days like this?
Yeah.
Well, as you can see in the 43-step notes there, one of the things they're doing, Fred, is buying things at a better price today, right? I put some more money into the market myself the other day. Unfortunately, not the perfect day, but the right timing, I believe, and all. And so everything doesn't go up or down the same, of course, any given day. So they might be selling some things that have had some strength and buying some things that they're feeling is a good value.
Looking at. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. We were talking about this yesterday, the new normal. We probably haven't reached that point yet, especially when it comes to the stock market and new investments. Eventually, we're going to know where we're at. Everybody's going to settle in. And not that, we'll still be in self-isolation and deaths may still be going up. But we'll get to the point where, well, this is where we are, this is what's happening, and so the markets will probably proceed, not explode, but settle in and operate, function normally. Is that too optimistic?
No, absolutely. I mean, I've talked often, and I'm sure we'll again, about the fact that markets are always logic and emotion, and how couldn't we be super emotional with everything that's happened over the last few weeks, right? So this is unprecedented territory, as we know, and when you get not surprises necessarily like Trump yesterday, but again, uncertainty, right? So people don't like uncertainty. Markets are made of people, so we don't need things to become perfect. We just need more certainty for the market to continue to rebound.
Having read through your manifesto, what my takeaway was, and I think this is kind of what I wanted you to relate, and you sort of have, which is there's smart people behind the scenes in these funds, smarter than we are, that are already either having taken some steps, are currently taking steps, and are looking to the future as to what they can do for preservation of capital. And then, of course, course, growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've got all the background, of course, all the training, the continued training, the analysis, the team. Lauren and I were talking about this last night. I said the average person will kind of use one data point to make a decision, and not usually a good data point. It'll be something that they saw in a headline, or a pal said, or a family belief. And these people, there's hundreds of them on any one fund, checking out tens of thousands of data points before making a single decision, right? And modeling, like I say, past things, looking at the effects that government actions are going to take, and finding the opportunities within that, and also the pitfalls within it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's certainly an unknown territory, and it's like everything else through this. You can look at other situations and sort of pinpoint what's going to happen, but it doesn't matter what you look at or what situation. It's just the great unknown with this. And is it scary? Yeah, I guess.
Well, and we were talking about this emotion thing on the show yesterday or the day before, whenever it was, that emotions drive markets. And when you're emotionally unsettled, whether it's something the president said or your own job and your own life, the markets reflect emotional instability. So at some point, this phrase, the new normal, when we normalize to this event, I think that's what you're saying about markets stabilizing.
Oh, absolutely. And so far, really what's happened is reality worse than a month ago, of course. Is there more uncertainty? Absolutely. But the depth with which the prices change on an hourly, let alone daily basis, the volatility, which has slowed down quite a bit the last week and a half, actually. There's a volatility index, not surprisingly.
Yeah.
Listen, there was no future event that couldn't be expected to have an apocalyptic scenario, right? And the pricing in the market was reflecting that. We're not going to have that. It's not pretty. It's not going to be good. There's going to be changes. But the world isn't ending. We've been through these before. We've always bounced back. 9/11, credit crisis, the tulip bulb craze of the 1300s, whichever thing it was. It'll be fine.
Listen, I'm glad you're well. It's great to see you. And funny, it's the way modern medicine works. You're up and around and back at work at home. If you have any questions for Tim, it's tim.niblet@raymondjames.ca. It might be just worth an email to get a second opinion. Even if Tim's not your guy, he'd be more than happy to help and maybe give you some guidance through these unsettled times.
With absolute pleasure. I think Monty Python's guidance is probably the best right now, to always look on the bright side of life, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
By the way, Howard, I added that song to the Humble and Fred list.
Oh, you did?
Yes, the Monty Python, always look at the bright side. Yeah.
All right. Well, right now I'm playing little Todd Rundgren for you as we say goodbye. Timmy, thanks very much, my brother.
Great to see you all. Enjoy and profit.
Thank you, pal. When we come back, Richard Surrett will be here, and we'll have a chance to just sort of get somebody else's perspective. It's always interesting to see what other people think, and that's coming up here when we come back from this break. It's Humble and Fred Radio.
There's something here that doesn't last too long. Maybe I shouldn't think of you as
Always a pleasure to have you along in the sunshine in southern Ontario, Canada, Hamilton, Toronto, Humble and Fred Show. A couple seconds from now, our pal Richard Surrett from The Conspiracy Show on Zoomer Radio, also heard on Coast to Coast AM occasionally, and a regular contributor to this nonsense spectacle. He's standing by. First, let's talk about our good friends at the Chamber Plan.
Chamber Plan, Canada's #1 plan for small business. They're fantastic. As you know, the Chamber Plan, on top of everything else, they're offering a COVID-19 sort of update page. And again, just another indication, another service that they offer on top of travel insurance, medical insurance, dental insurance, the teledoc system, which is coming in so handy right now for those who are reluctant to leave their home if they're coming down with something. Small businesses, 1 to 50 employees, it's perfect for you. It really is. Go to chamberplan.ca, get a free quote, and find out how simple it is to become part of this plan and look after your people, the people that you value so much. Chamberplan.ca.
Of course, our people that we value, our guests and friends of the show. When it was business as usual, every time we would have a guest in, we would give away a beautiful Palma pasta lasagna, right, Phil?
That's right.
Philly would go downstairs, or Sean, and we'd get a Palma pasta, we'd give it a lasagna. You know, I
It's
mean,
so tempting.
listen, no matter how contentious a conversation gets, when you finish with a nice Palma pasta lasagna, I mean, you know, that creates a feeling of family, a feeling of friendship. Yesterday, Freddie, you went down to Palma's Kitchen. It's still open for business on Seminole Drive in Mississauga. All kinds of supplies. You can also take away. You can get Palma pasta delivered through Skip the Dishes, but you did what I do. You go to Palma's Kitchen, you pick stuff up yourself, and it makes everyone feel better.
A very safe environment. Was there yesterday, and they're taking all the precautions that need to be taken at this time. And I went in and got a nice supply of food for myself and got some things for my daughter and her children. Much appreciated. And on my way out, Howard, I had a few bags. Lillian, who works there, very complimentary towards the show, and she helped me carry my bags out.
Well, that's who you are now.
Uh-huh. Because she said, I'll help you with this. I said, no, Lillian, it's not necessary, but she insisted.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Service with a smile.
Well,
Yes.
I'll tell you, beside all the pasta, what I also stocked up on was little cookies, little Italian cookies that I now have with my tea. All right, let's get to it, kids. You may have seen on Twitter, people are like, oh, when Richard gets on the show, are you guys going to ask him about Trump? We're going to ask him about Trump, about other things. First, let's welcome back to our program. As I mentioned, host of Coast to Coast, as well as the Conspiracy Show Sunday nights on Zoomer Radio, our friend Richard Surrett. Good tidings, brother.
Gentlemen, Fred.
Good to see you. Mm-hmm. No, I get it. Gentlemen. Right. The old gentleman Fred.
Hey,
routine.
Richard, how's the family? Everybody okay? You guys sequestered in your bunker there?
The sad truth is I have not noticed any difference.
Yeah.
It's just business as usual, you know. I never get out of the house. I've been, like you, maybe, practicing social distance for about 4 decades.
Well, it's funny. My day-to-day,
Steady as she goes.
my day-to-day doing the show hasn't changed much. I, come downstairs. I open up these microphones. The only difference is that Fred's in Brampton, Phil's in Woodbridge, and you're somewhere in Toronto. And by the way, just tell us, when's the next time you're going to be hosting Coast to Coast?
That's to be determined because the Toronto affiliate where I do the show from, News Talk 1010, they have sort of preempted or suspended Coast to Coast for the time being. They're running local programming, which is understandable. They're focusing on coronavirus. And so they can't even provide me with a little back studio to connect with the LA studio for Coast because they've issued this new rule, no non-employees are allowed in the building. So I have no place to do the show at the moment. So I'm kind of scrambling around looking for a piece of hardware. I think it's called Comrex.
Yeah.
So that
Yes.
I can do Coast from my little studio here.
I was going to say your studio there sounds great. You know, it's funny, we've had so many different people on our show in the last couple of weeks using their home little rigs, and then, you know, it's funny how it sounds pretty good.
Well, as long I'm under the stairs, so as long as someone doesn't flush the toilet, we're okay.
So so you don't have the technology as it sits, say, to hook up with LA. You would need one of those boxes.
Yeah, Comrex. They've been experimenting with some of these. I think they call them VoIP, like Voice over Internet Protocol. There's something called Clean Feed. They've tried that, but it's just not, you know, it's like 2 Dixie cups and some string. It doesn't have broadcast quality. So it looks like Comrex, which is about $2,300 retail plus tax, may be the way to go. And that's okay.
And just so everybody knows, and we're not talking over their head, your favorite radio station, most of the people now are broadcasting from home, and that's how they're doing it in a lot of cases. So,
well, right. I mean, my weekly show on Zoomer, I do over Skype, but it's not the most reliable thing. And but I can get away with doing that for Zoomer, but that's one station as opposed to, you know, like 650 affiliates for Coast. So they're not going to let me do that over Skype.
So let's take let's start with this as a jumping off point. Let's say you were doing a show like the Humble and Fred show, and somebody had no prior opinion or knowledge of the president prior to 2 months ago. So let's say, forget everything you knew about him before. How would you explain to somebody that had no prior knowledge of him, how would you explain the job he's done in the last 6 or 7 weeks?
Well, listen, we all sort of bake into the equation, those of us that by and large support the direction that Trump has taken our greatest trading partner and greatest friend for the last 3.5 years. We bake into the equation that he's going to say some stupid stuff. And he's going to tweet some stupid stuff. But look at the Gallup poll, 60% approval. This is a kind of event or issue that will define leaders around, whether it's Trudeau or Boris Johnson or Trump. And, you know, 60% approval rating in the way he's handled this situation. I mean, in many ways, he was ahead of the curve. When the World Health Organization had not yet declared this a global pandemic, and when the Democrats were busy, trying to impeach the president, he closed off flights from China and was called a xenophobe and was widely smeared as a racist for doing this. And then after he does it, those same people are accusing him of not doing it fast enough. So I think in a lot of cases our anger and frustration is aimed at the wrong people. The World Health Organization, one of these corrupt, inept organizations, and we look to them to take our cues, right? They're supposed to be the early warning system. CNN declared this a global pandemic before the World Health Organization did. And it's run by this, he's not even a doctor. He's the first director of WHO not to be a medical doctor. Mm-hmm. And he was a health minister in Ethiopia, and he was a former rebel, I suppose. One man's rebel is another man's terrorist. It was a Marxist-Leninist regime in Ethiopia, and he's been very has a lot of positive things to say about the Chinese regime, while being critical of others. I mean, praising China. This is the country that lied about what was going on over there. They were welding people into their own houses during the quarantine. They're disappearing any doctor over there who dares to speak out or that tried to warn people about what was happening. And again, late to the dance in declaring this a global pandemic. So, I think our anger and frustration is misdirected. Yeah, Trump says stupid stuff.
Yeah, but he's saying stupid stuff. He said stupid stuff. I mean, and by the way, your timeline's a little wonky. The WHO declared it a pandemic before they did anything about it. But I won't dispute that. But his funny little things that he says now are as we've often said to you before, making people feel more and more unstable. He went from saying it was a hoax to yesterday saying
no, he never said it was a hoax.
I've got it right in front of me, Richard. He's got it right in front of me. He said
what he said.
The Democrats are now saying it's a hoax. He also said it was going to be 5 cases.
Okay, he said that the Democrats using this against him is a hoax. If you read the whole transcript, this is another one of those, Charlottesville things where he said, "Oh, the white supremacists, some of them are good people." That's held up as the prime example of him being a racist. Except he never said that. Never said it. And,
You know what, Richard? I'll give you that because I was going to mention this yesterday. That's semantics, but I think we know what he meant, if that's even fair to say. But he was calling their usage of the pandemic as a hoax.
Right.
You know what? I personally, I'll give you that one because I've looked into that pretty good. But again, sometimes you're your own worst enemy. If I can make a couple of points, first of all, 60% isn't very good because traditionally in situations like this, it's 80 or 90 for a president. So that's not very good, the 60%. Plus the flight thing, I think he cut off the flights to appease his base. Oh, look at me! I'm stopping more of those foreign people from those S-hole countries from coming in. I think that was the extent of it, because right on the heels of that, then he's downplaying it like it's not a very big deal. So why did he cut off the flights if he didn't think it was a very big deal for weeks after that? It was to appease that base.
Well, I love this. So there's logic that a politician will do things to appease his base. Well, that's what politicians do.
No, yeah, exactly.
First and foremost, number one, and number two, it was the right thing to do, and everyone now agrees it was the right thing to do.
Well, they hold it up like it was the greatest thing anyone ever did, but
no. But my point is motive. In retrospect, he can look back. He lucked out on that one. But the reason
he admits it. He said, "Yeah, I thought I made the right decision, and yeah, we got lucky." He admits that, but it was the right thing to do, and he did it in the face of tremendous opposition from the same people who are now turning around and saying, you didn't act quickly enough."
Okay, let me ask you a question. So you know what side we're on, and we know what side you're on. But could you maybe just do something for the sake of this silly conversation? Can you make our argument? Could you see why people find him frustrating, dangerous? Do you see any of that, or like us, do you only see the side that you're on?
Does he? Again, yeah, he says some dumb things sometimes, and that's actually, believe it or not, it's part of the appeal for us, because we're so used to these cardboard cutouts who, he's always being accused of not being presidential. Who cares? What good does being presidential get us?
No, but if I may interject, it's one thing. Yeah, I get it. Like, he's a renegade, but you just gotta. You gotta watch him and wonder. It's one thing not being presidential, but he doesn't seem to have a very good handle on things. Could you maybe talk about that? Because one day he's saying, let's get it back for Easter, and the people around him are going, no, we can't do that. That's not being presidential. That's just being irresponsible and not informed.
No, he again, and then he stated this is an aspirational goal. He wasn't saying we're going to do this.
Yes, he
said
did.
This is what we. He said no, he didn't. He
said let's get it raring to go by Easter. It's a beautiful day. Again,
okay, so you read into that.
I heard him say it.
Okay, so he says a lot of things, but people know him, I think, well enough to know that he's being aspirational here. This is what we need to aim for. And I think that's laudable, because people are looking for hope. And how much longer are we going to, allow this to go on where we're going to crater the economy? Everyone is focusing on and it's important, obviously, the tally here, the new cases and the fatalities, which is tragic. I don't care if you're 103 and you have underlying conditions, it doesn't matter. That's a tragedy. Every human life is valuable. But we're not focusing on the economic impact. And the economic impact is intrinsically linked to our health. And if we think that, we're going to be able to continue to do this into June and July and August, and then maybe there'll be a second wave, we're not going to be able to do it. People aren't going to put up with it. We're not built the same way as other regimes, where they'll march in lockstep with authority. To some of us, most of us, I hope, liberty is more important. I mean, if Google just they've launched this new app. It's called Google Ways. And if you want to test, you've got to enter this online portal, and you've got to give them your Google account and your cell number, and so that they can track you. And if you test positive, they want to track your whereabouts. Okay, so what this is shaping up is, I think this is important for people to understand, because last time I was on, I talked about how, I don't know who's behind this, or whether it was natural, or whether it escaped from a lab. That's almost secondary now. How is this going to be seized upon by certain people? And what this is coming down to in the next decade, there's going to be this titanic struggle between health and civil liberties. And I look around and I see people cheering this, the quarantining, and we've got to snitch on people that cough in public and are out walking their dogs in the park and so forth. It's going to come down to health and civil liberties. And you know what? Health is going to win. And that sickens me.
So what's the alternative, though? I don't get that, because without health, if millions of people die, what good is liberties in the economy? What good is that?
Because if you're going to be forced to take an app, and Bill Gates now is on record saying we need a national tracking system, and we need a system where people who test positive are publicly identified, so that we can engage in social distancing from those people.
Well,
if
Richard,
that's where it's headed, I'll take my chances with the disease.
Okay, but think about what all they're saying is: you test, you track, you isolate. These are all sort of fairly, I mean, anyone that's seen Contagion, the movie, knows that. I mean, Matt Damon did it. But, my point is, those are all sort of health care protocols. It's not a conspiracy, although I would like to ask you about that. What do you see as the conspiracy in all of this?
Well, I see this as just another beta test, and they keep upping the ante every time. So, we're going to survive this. We're going to get through this. I'm not sure, the economy is going to be in tatters afterwards. But if, like, I spoke to a guy yesterday about the history of the great influenza, the 1918 flu. And, things came roaring back after that, the roaring 20s, right? So let's hope that we have a repeat of that.
Yeah.
But when we get through this, there'll be another one. There'll be another Wuhan virus, or Wuhan .2 or whatever that comes around. Or it may be a variant of this. It's going to be with us for a long time, by all accounts. They'll up the ante again. And then we'll get into a situation where it'll be forced vaccinations. And it'll be a constant ratcheting up. And so, again, as I say, it's going to be the struggle between people who want, great health care, which is going to be, the payment for that will be basically 24-hour monitoring. This to me is very, very disturbing.
What I find disturbing about what you've just said is, if we were still in a phase where there wasn't a lot of cases, and the government was trying to impose things that seemed overreaching, all we have to do, Richard, is look at Italy. Is that not enough? Is that not enough for us in North America to take measures sort of unprecedented for the goodness of all? And you know what? Screw liberty.
Screw liberty.
No, until we get a handle on this thing and the curve is flattened, because we have proof. There's mass deaths all over. I don't want that to happen in Canada or the United States. So until we get a handle on this, and that my wife and my kids and my grandchildren are safe, screw liberty. Let's get a handle on this and then worry about that. Because I think you're way ahead of the game, man, worrying about, the tracking systems of Google. I mean, let's deal with what's in front of us.
Wait a minute. No, I'm not getting ahead of it. These things are here. I mean, they're talking about, tagging people who you see cough, tagging people who you see hoarding toilet paper.
Come on.
Well, okay. Listen, before we lose you here in another couple of minutes, so we talked about the conspiracy. We talked about Trump. Is there a scenario where you see liberty being protected at the same time human lives aren't being lost?
do I see a scenario? Well,
Because what you see is if we give up our liberties, you're willing to sacrifice some health for people not being tagged and tracked like they have been in other countries.
right, right. Well, getting back to what Trump said, this aspirational goal of there's going to be a point, I think, where you're going to see the curve flattened, but you're also going to see areas that are virtually unaffected or very, very few cases. Let's open those places up. I don't know, maybe in northern Saskatchewan or someplace. Let people get back to work and start making some money.
Yeah, but the problem is, Richard, the places where it's not very virulent aren't the places that are going to drive the economy. Opening up Battleford, Saskatchewan isn't going to do it's the metro centers that are the economic engine.
Well,
and if I might just interject here, the problem with that, it tends to attract people that are in isolated areas that are locked down. It happened in Italy. The north part, they locked it down, so everybody headed south. So that could be a problem. We're all
listen,
in this together.
We got it. I'm not asking people to be reckless here. I'm just asking people to be vigilant and push back a little bit rather than cowering in our houses and say, please, please deliver us from this evil, whatever you say, whatever you say. No, this is Western civilization. We don't roll that way. This is not China. But I see a lot of people look to China as kind of the blueprint. Well, we should be doing what they're doing. In China, they have a similar thing where they have like an app and you get a QR code, it's called. And after you've been tested, and if you have to enter this QR code, if you're positive, you get a QR code. If you enter this QR code when you go into a grocery store, if you go anywhere, you try to get on a train, access denied. This is the kind of tracking they have in China. And don't be thinking it's not going to come here. Silicon Valley is already salivating over this stuff.
There's another aspect of this, and I know that you're a learned man, and I have no problem with, you can worship as you wish. I have before, we're gonna have to go to a break here, but I want to maybe think about the question: do you think it's reckless for religious leaders to having defied, like the pastor that was arrested in Florida, for congregating thousands of people? Do you think that it's reckless to believe that you're going to be okay in a group of 3,000 people and et cetera? So you want to think about that while we take a quick break?
Sure.
All right. Freddie, you all right there?
Very good.
All right.
Yes.
Well, let me just continue operating the show here. Here we go. Richard Surratt's going to hang around for a few more minutes. You can check out the conversation on Facebook Live or on Twitch. And, of course, Richard, the host of Zoomer Radio's Conspiracy Show, Sunday nights, and occasionally coast to coast, our guest this morning on Humble and Fred Radio. Hang on.
I'm packed and I'm holding, I'm smiling, she living, she golden, she lives for me, says she lives for me, boggy marsh, totally motionless except for her heart. Mud flowed up into Lump's pajamas. She totally confused all the passing piranhas. She's Lump, she's Lump.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It's the Humble and Fred Show now, and it's 30th year. I don't remember. 31st year. Is it?
Yes, 31st year.
Yeah. The plague known as the Humble and Fred Show.
That makes me think of the word legendary.
Yeah. The virus that never went away. With us is our friend Richard Surred, who hosts the Conspiracy Show on Zoomer Radio. I have had many a conversation on the sidelines with Richard when I get overwrought with worry about the world of conspiracy. He's been always so kind to take my call and talk me off the ledge. And, of course, Richard can be heard on Coast to Coast AM occasionally, all across the United States. Today we're talking to him about all things Trump and getting a different perspective. One of the things we were talking about during the break, and just before, I wanted to mention, how do you reconcile, or what's your thoughts on the religious right, the influence on politics, and more, not importantly, but that story we had, Fred, about the pastor in Florida that was finally arrested after.
Yeah, he was actually arrested because he was warned not to, congregate. And he put like 1,100 people or something in the church, and that violated the bylaw, and he paid for it.
And it's easy to beat up on religion. A lot of people do. But Richard, as a learned man, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, yeah, it was reckless and it was irresponsible. I don't throw science out the window just because, I'm a Christian. Now, I have to say here, though, that this is we're in a holy season for Christians. We're in the midst of Lent. I can't go to a church and partake of an important sacrament for us, which is the Holy Eucharist, communion. There are reports that there are still a number of mosques still operating in Toronto. So we have a little bit of that situation up here as well. So yeah, it's obviously there has to be a penalty there. You can't be gathering 1,100 people into a confined space. I mean, I don't know what more to say. Yeah, there are idiots everywhere.
Does it bother you when you see, I can't remember the name of the pastor, one of the televangelist guys, trying to convince his flock that he can somehow, pray the virus out of them? I mean, listen, there's crazy stuff.
Well, that's not my branch of Christianity.
That's not your brand?
That's not my brand. But I see, I believe prayer is important at this time. Absolutely, 100% it is.
You raise an interesting point there about the mosques. That's one thing that concerns me. It's if we're all in this together, we all have to cooperate together, and we all have to be policed. I'll use that word, together. Now, if there's things going on, if mosques are still functioning in the GTA that shouldn't be, well, they should be handled just like a church would. We can't get into a situation, well, we don't want to go into a mosque because it won't look good, and xenophobia and
exactly. Yeah, and the vast majority obviously are cooperating, but there are some.
That's right.
Sure.
No, we got to stay away from. I totally agree with that. It was like last week in Chinatown, there was even a couple of restaurants open still, and street merchants doing things like sort of screwing with the rules a bit. And I didn't really see any follow-up stories about the police going in and cracking down on them like they may have in other areas of the city. So we can't play that game, that's for sure, because we're all in it together.
Well, that's the danger of political correctness. Remember the lefty mayor in Florence, Italy, who is beseeching his constituents to go out on the streets, after we knew this was a pandemic, and hug a Chinese person. There are a lot of Chinese migrants working in northern Italy because of the leather shops up there were purchased by Chinese companies, and then they bring in a lot of their workers. So again, in order to virtue signal and show you're not a racist, go out on the street and hug a Chinese person. I mean,
Yeah.
Listen, this is just it's political correctness becomes dangerous at a certain point.
Well, listen,
yes.
we tried to hug Phil, and he wouldn't let us.
I don't qualify.
Yeah, Phil was like, I said, Phil, we said, for solidarity, we tried to hug him.
I'm
And,
sorry, Indo-Chinese.
I'm sorry. I apologize, Phil. Listen, we got to let you go, man. Richard Surrett, what a pleasure. It's great to visit with you occasionally now, regularly. And once again, check out his Conspiracy Show. What time? It starts at 11 o'clock this Sunday night.
11 p.m. Sundays.
All right, man.
Zoomer Radio. God bless.
All right, and
Thanks,
all the
Rick.
best. Yeah, all the best to you and your family. There you
Thanks,
go,
Rick.
everyone. That's Richard Surrett. We did it. We had him on. No one got hurt. We're all fine. You know, and, hey, by the way, before you go, no Jews are gathering. We're not gathering. We don't gather anymore.
You're all sitting Shiva.
No, exactly. We're sitting Shiva for retail, brother. You can use that joke.
I'm writing it down.
Seriously, we soon the first sign of trouble, we stop gathering.
A little sponge cake would be nice.
That's right. A little sponge cake, a little coffee. Thank you, Richard.
Bye-bye.
There's
Thanks,
Richard,
Rich.
Richard Surrett
Thank you,
saying
Fred.
so long, everyone. Well, there you go. There you go, everybody.
I like that because, you know, I'm so tired of. Listen, we all don't think the same. We all don't have the same values and religions and all that stuff. And I mean, we open that door and Rich explains himself. I'm just glad it doesn't turn into like a pissing match or talking over each other, because nothing is ever served that way.
Now, I don't know what
So-
people wanted us to do, but
Well,
I
that's
like
right.
that. I like that conversation because it was a conversation.
Yeah, if there's anybody who would sit there going, oh, you should have gone harder at him. Well, the thing is, you and I in 20 minutes aren't going to change Richard Surrett's mind. And I think it's very important for people to hear that stuff, because if you wonder why Trump has a base or why Trump thrives or gets reelected, that's why, because there's people with a different attitude and a different opinion, and you're not going to change that.
And intelligent people, like the guy's no dummy. He has he is as thoughtful guy you're going to find when it comes to this. And especially what I like about talking to him is especially because of the conspiracy angle. You know, he's talking to a lot of people who are also thinking differently about this crisis than not only we are, but a lot of people are. And I think it's good. There are some good stories, by the way, Freddie. I wanted to make mention of our former, well, they're still friends of ours, the Slate family, who supported this show for a long, long time. FYI Music and all kinds of things. The Slate family announced the foundation is donating $3 million to some food-focused organizations in the city. And, you know, when I saw this story, my first thought was no surprise. I mean, we've known Gary for a long time. And the Slate family been part of our lives a long time. And, you know, they have a lot of money, and they're not afraid to spend it. So I thought I'd mention that.
What a great position to be in, you know, where you have the means in a situation like this to be able to help others at that level. And, you know, there's a lot of people with a lot of money that don't do anything, but I'll tell you, they sure answer the call, don't they?
They do.
On so many. Yeah.
Second Harvest, Breakfast Clubs of Canada, Food Banks of Canada, and the Daily Bread Food Bank. We still, even though it's not $3 million, we do have that check from the lovely person that gave us $500 the other day, and I'm going to try and figure out a way to get it to you. You know, at some point we're going to get together and go on a nice nature walk.
Yes.
But it's, you know, listen, we're all trying to figure out not only what to do for ourselves, but how we can help others, and maybe if we can pass on that message that those 4 organizations being supported by Gary and his family might be a nice thing for our listeners as well. You brought something up yesterday that I hadn't considered. I thought about it. You know, you're a big fan of the guys on TSN in Toronto. 1050
Overdrive, yes. Brian Hayes and Jeff O'Neill and Jamie McClellan.
And that's a Bell station too, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, we can talk about them. And you brought this up, and I kind of thought, tell everyone what you said to me.
From what aspect? About having Brian on?
Well, no, but those guys having to go on every day and do a sports radio talk show with no sports.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I said the challenges of sports talk radio. I mean, you look at us. I mean, we're on a comedy station and, we try to bring some levity to this, but what do we talk about? We talk about the virus and how it's affecting everyone. Sports talk is just a little bit of a different beast in a situation like this. Those guys are often talking about the game the night before or, the contract negotiations from the day before or whatever. All of a sudden it's just vacant. There's absolutely nothing to talk about. Not only that, even a lot of the players, they're in self isolation, and I believe they've probably been told by the organizations not to do media for whatever reason, because there's, again, a lot of unknowns. What do you say about the future of coming back, or how certain teams are handling things? Like the Ottawa Senators, they have 2 or 3 players with the virus, and we don't know who those players are. So they've been pretty secretive. The bottom line is you're a sports talk station, and, sports television like Sportsnet and TSN, at least they can show classic games. Can't do that on the radio. So these guys, I mean, you're really earning your paycheck now to fill 3 hours of sports talk in this environment.
And I know some of these sports radio stations are actually in the evening running old hockey games.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, man. I know the other sports station that we won't mention because they're not a best station. They're running old Leaf games, and I think they ran. I think we talked about it a couple weeks ago or whatever. They ran the playoffs, the Raptors. Anyway,
well, that's just a wasteland because nobody listen. The visual aspect of that I see, but just straight audio for classic games, forget it. But they know they're going to take a huge hit, like they did during 9/11. It was the same thing. Everybody gravitated towards the news stations. But I know what you're going to say. On Tuesday morning, Brian Hayes is he's our guest at 8:00, and he's going to talk about the challenges of sports talk radio.
It's interesting. It's kind of full circle for us because we've been friends. I've been friends with his father, Bill, when I went to the mix in 1991 when it was still CKFM. His dad, was a huge voice broadcaster, a guy I admired. And, of course, Bill's been on the show a few times. Bill was even doing a podcast with us. Phil was producing Bill and Randy Taylor doing a show a few months ago. And then it'll be interesting having his son, who I know you're a big admirer of, to talk about his career and also, as you say, the idea of doing sports radio in a time without sports.
Listen, I don't know the country as a whole, but I'll say it, and I've said it to you. To me, Brian Hayes is the best young broadcaster in Toronto, maybe the country. The guy is so smooth. I mean, I just sit there and listen to him some nights, and I don't even think he's 40 years old yet, but he's just so seasoned and so smart and on and on and on. Yeah, I'm a big fan.
It's interesting. They talk a lot about child raising. Is it nature? Is it nurture? But, his father's Bill Hayes. His uncle's John Derringer. The kid, it's like you grow up around it. Is it any... It's almost like it was ordained in a way that he was going to be a decent to great broadcaster because he's got it in his family.
Yeah, it's... the way some people just cut through, that's the way he is with me. I mean, you could listen to the radio all day long and just, take it for what it is. But every so often you hear a voice or an opinion or a talent that just cuts through. And to me, that's him.
Speaking of sports, on the show tomorrow, I mentioned earlier Bob Weeks of Score Golf Magazine, Score Golf TV, and I'm sure Score Golf Podcast. Bob is a guy I've known a long time. He's going to talk a little bit of golf tomorrow, what they're doing in the country. I was seeing some messages going back and forth with my golf buddies talking about what Club Link is going to do as an organization, and maybe I'll have some answers tomorrow. But in the world of golf, it's like other sports. They're trying to figure out what to do. And I think you even saw this somewhere, but I'll talk about Tiger versus Phil 2.0 and not Phil Hong, not Tiger King. Tiger King versus Phil Hong. They're now talking about, because they did this big Las Vegas, $9-10 million match a couple years ago. It was kind of lame. But now they're talking about just getting a camera and Phil and Tiger, who live near each other in Florida, to just do something for golf fans, you know, sort of a made for the internet event or made for the Golf Channel event where they just kind of go out and the two of them just play each other, you know, social distancing, et cetera, et cetera. But I thought, you know, in the absence of anything else going on, it might be interesting to see.
On Brian's show, Overdrive, the other day, they had a golf expert on. I forget his name. Sorry. But he was talking about the logistics of such a thing, and he seemed to think it was a huge challenge, but I found it somewhat intriguing. Can you imagine Phil and Tiger on the golf course staying 10 feet away with one cameraman keeping his distance? But that would be cool because they're well, I shouldn't say this, but they could have the one cameraman could be in a cart, I guess, and operate it that way. But, you know, Phil shoots, the guy goes over there and shoots, you know, and you know, and he has his camera, and then it's Tiger's turn, so he whips over there. They generally would never be that far apart, right? You know?
Well,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, logistically it would be a bit wonky. Like, wouldn't be like.
I think that's that part I find sort of neat.
Yeah, the charm of it would be. Yeah, me too. Like I said, logistically, you wouldn't catch all the shots like you're used to, and there'd be no top tracer. But just the idea of seeing those two guys kind of interacting normally, whether it's one camera or a couple, I just thought it was, you know, in the absence, listen, dude, in the absence of anything else, I'd watch it. You know, they've been running old tournaments each weekend. And the idea, as you were saying, about watching sports visually is different than listening to it on the radio. But, you know, I've been watching Sunday afternoon just because it's something I always have done. So this weekend, I don't know what they're running, but I know next weekend they'll be running 4 days of the 2019 Masters. They'll run the whole thing all over again from start to finish because that's the one that Tiger won. But I'll watch it. I'll watch it again on Sunday afternoon.
You will, eh?
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, I have Leafs TV in the odd time. There's what they call classic Leaf games. Get a load of this. The team hasn't even been to a Stanley Cup final in 50 years. What really is a Leaf classic game? I mean, seriously. What is that? When we lost Game 7 of the
against Boston,
the semifinal, or 1993, they went to the conference final and lost in Game 7 to LA.
That's a classic.
That's the pinnacle. Like, that's your classic. It's like, it's so sad from that aspect.
I think they reran the World Series last weekend on something. Sportsnet or something was running the.
I would only watch Game 7 of that, or whatever the clinching game was for the Blue Jays. I would probably see that it was on and think, okay, I'm going to give myself a little reminder here that I'll watch the clinching game and in the last couple of innings. I can't sit there and watch the whole thing because I know what the outcome is.
You know, I think golf is. I've told you, golf's a little bit different. Only in that, even I'll watch classic rounds, even though I know the outcome, just to sort of see how it all unraveled. But I promise you, on Sunday, a week from whatever this Sunday is, CBS will rerun the final round of the Masters, and I'll tell you what, the ratings will be pretty good, even though we all know that Tiger wins. Hey, before we get too far away here, Fred, man, let's talk, if you can, a little bit about, I know you weren't supposed to do CDN, but why don't you do that, and I'll talk about a few of our other supporters. Okay, let me just call it up here so that I don't miss anything. All right, let's do that. Phil, are you going to be producing No Tech Talk with Barb Paluskowicz remotely?
We're going to try to see if there's a good solution for that, yes.
Excellent news, young man.
Well, that's a pivotal word, solutions. When it comes to CDN Technologies, of course, they have a solution for whatever your problem might be with your network. Is your current IT team spending 10 hours on a 1-hour problem? Well, CDN Technologies will come in and get it done fast because you need to be operating at your full potential all the time, do you not? Is your network slow? They've got a solution for that. And being hacked or a data breach, of course, that's a huge concern for all businesses of all sizes. well, they can protect you from that as well. CDN Technologies, cdntechnologies.com is where to go, or you can call them at 905-542-9759.
Very nice. We mentioned some of the people that are supporting us during these times. Our good friend Dave White and I were talking about his company, QLD Communications. You know, they supply two-way radio technology to the movie industry, television production, also big, factories and things like that. If there's somebody in your network that can use Dave's services, their business, like a lot of small businesses, man, just listening to him talk about his business and trying to support his employees, during this time, they're looking at different government programs, but, I really admire what he's doing there at QLD because he's got, I think, 10 or 12 employees, and he's trying to month by month keep them on the payroll while not bleeding too much business. So if there's some two-way radio needs of, or somebody in a situation where they're still an essential service and they could use his services, hit him up for sure. QLD Communications.
We were talking about sports, and honestly, I haven't missed sports yet. I think part of it was because the Maple Leafs I found them so unlikable down the stretch there. The Blue Jay thing, Thursday passed. I was supposed to go to the home opener, and that didn't happen. I had a bit of a heavy heart there. But again, baseball hasn't been around, so I don't really miss what we haven't had. I was talking to my buddy Donnie Patterson yesterday, big Bruins fan, and we were discussing things, and I said probably the best thing about the NHL season being shut down was the fact that the Bruins were stopped in their tracks, having the best season probably they've ever had, wiping the floor with the rest of the NHL. It was nice to see that halted.
Well, I thought you were going to say without the NHL season, it would be you don't have to have the excruciating whatever. I'm watching the Leafs lose in the first round again.
Oh, yeah. Their golf course day or whatever they want to call it.
That's right. Listen, fellas, should we do a podcast extra today, or have we exhausted all the subject matter? Phil, is there something you have to say to the people before we leave Funny 820, or can it wait?
Oh, we got to be careful. We got to be careful because we're starting to get more cases of COVID-19 in our neighborhood, especially here where I live. So we got to be careful. What's
that got to do with the podcast extra?
Well, I mean, that's all. I had something to say. That's all.
I'm kidding.
Come on, Phil.
I'm glad you asked him that because I was just stunned. All right, listen. We have a thanks to Richard Surrett. We didn't hear from Boone today. He was supposed to zoom in and tell us about his wrist injury.
Well, I can tell you, something. I think it was a dog ran in front of him. He tried to avoid it, fell off his bike, smashed his head, broke his helmet, had a CAT scan. It was fine, but he broke his wrist through all that.
All right. Maybe we will just linger for a few extra minutes at humbleandfredradio.com. I want to tell you a little bit about the Humble and Fred show ratings. But first, here's Fizzy to say goodbye.
This episode of Humble and Fred Radio is brought to you by FYI Music News, The Retirement Sherpa, Gig Sky, The Chambers Plan, Palma Pasta, and CDN Technologies. We broadcast the planet from the worldwide headquarters of the Humble and Fred Show. More Humble and Fred tomorrow and online at humbleandfredradio.com.
I needed love most of all. Someone said true love was dead, and I'm bound to fall for you.
Yeah, did you see what I put up? Well, yeah, Fred, you're not on Facebook. Phil, did you see what I put up on Facebook yesterday?
Let me look it up.
On Humble and Fred Radio?
Oh, right. Yes.
What?
Yeah, we talk a little bit about the iTunes podcast ranking.
Oh.
And we've, I don't know what's going on, man. I don't know whether it's, this last month or so because of what we've been talking about. Mm-hmm. But we haven't been inside the top 100. I mean, we're well inside the top 200 usually, but We haven't been inside the top 100 for some time, and I can only chalk it up to the fact that there may be more people kind of tuning in to see what our take on this nonsense is. But
Excellent.
I thought I had put us. Phil, do you know that we're huge in? There's an Asian country that really loves the Humble and Fred show.
There's a few of those Asian countries, eh?
Well, no, but I thought I put it aside for you. Oh, here we go.
No.
What was yesterday? Let's see. Anyway, yeah, we're for some reason we're doing okay.
On that point, I've been thinking about this. It's like everything is just so screwed up now. Like if we say tomorrow we decided to do a show without talking about the virus and or Donald Trump, what would we talk about? Now, we've never had a problem coming up with content, but usually content is driven by the news or happenings or experience. It's just being sequestered in your own home and having most aspects of sports and entertainment, pop culture shut down. What would we talk about? I mean, really?
Well, I looked down at what we talked about today. We mentioned what we're watching on Netflix. That was about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about your Brian Hayes and golf a little bit. That's another 5 minutes. And Dan was on doing weather. That was 10 minutes. So out of 2 hours, we had 20 minutes that wasn't the world that's shit's going on.
And I'm not saying we should be doing that or shouldn't be doing the virus, because that's the world we're in right now. And I mean, through that, I mean, we can have some levity and some jokes. And I saw a meme yesterday. Where did I see it? I saw it. Oh, maybe it was in a newspaper thing. And the thing was, is this too soon? But it showed like the 1 million person march from a few years ago. Remember that thing?
Yeah.
And the slogan was "March to End Coronavirus," which I thought was very funny. Yeah, that. Yeah, I mean, you can have some fun with it at the same time, can't you? Because we'll all go crazy if we don't laugh about it a bit. So.
I agree. I think that we have to put some of that into every show, because, you know, what else? Because if not, it's just going to be nonsense. It's just going to be dour and shitty, and, you know. And we're still not. That's why we get into that little debate with Richard. It's like, oh, okay, see, I'm not a big conspiracy guy. And then, yeah, we can put liberty aside right now. If you look at the true definition of what liberty is, I get it. And I want that. And of course you would want that. It means, of course, we should all be free and we should all be able to make up our own minds. But at this point, we just got to park that a bit. And again, it's not like, there's just a few cases and the government's overreacting and to get control of us. Just look at Italy. No, but
you know what? Yeah.
I know there's a whole world of those guys. I told you about the preppers who think that, this is a way of tracking and tagging us and the government knowing where we are for 24 hours in a day. And then there are those that think, as we do, that a little short-term. Listen, if you go and see what the U.S. did after 9/11, do you know what the Patriot Act is?
I can't remember.
Well, they enacted something called the Patriot Act after 9/11, and they took away, Phil, as you well know, a bunch of liberties for the safety of the country, they said at the time. Now,
That's very true. Like, this chat software is regulated by Patriot Act.
So my point is, and I should have brought this up with Richard, but I just remembered it now, that it's not without precedent for us to give up some of our, like the Patriot Act had a lot to do with privacy, cell phone tracking, and people willingly gave that up in the short term And the irony is some of those things are still in place for the long-term health of the nation.
And remember, these things, like whether there's coronavirus or not, if the government wants to track us, they're going to track us, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, I don't think they care enough, or I don't think the government's that evil or even has their shit together enough to even be able to do it, number two. Number three, if I've gotten, and this is awful, and I know a lot of people would be appalled at this, but it's sort of my attitude. If I have nothing to hide, why do I care? I mean, we're in this technological world now, and things are changing so rapidly, and that ability exists. Like, I don't have time to worry about that. I'll just go about my day, be a good citizen, and let the chips fall where they may.
But the funny thing is, people like Richard, who are bemoaning the loss of our freedoms and liberties, would have been those people supporting the enacting of the Patriot Act and other things like that at the time of that crisis. And I agree with you. You know, listen, I can just tell you right now, is there a silver lining? Yes, Phil, because Pornhub has extended their premium service for free for one more month. So all will be good in your world, you little pervert, Phil.
I'm at liberty to create wrist injuries all day.
If I might add, too, they got Howard Stern to make a big announcement. SiriusXM is now free, the premium service, right through May 15th.
Oh, really?
And they've spun it. Hey, look what we're doing for you during this time where everybody's, in their homes and they can't go out. Hey, we're giving you this entertainment. But I'll tell you, there's a business in trouble. I'll tell you, right, with streaming and Spotify and all these music services and everything.
Yeah.
And your ability, a lot of these, like the iHeartRadio app, a lot of that talk radio offered on Sirius, I can get through a free app. They're in trouble. So, I mean, to their credit, they've spun it like they're doing everybody a big favor. But what they want to do is just open themselves up. People can sample and hopefully subscribe.
Have you
like
heard-
I told you I had no problem last week renewing at 6 months for $30. That's $5 a month.
Did you have you heard any Stern during this? Because I have a little bit. They're all doing it remotely, and
No, I haven't.
it's
no.
interesting because you and I have often talked about the compression on his microphone,
Oh, right. Yeah.
and when it's not there,
yes.
it does. Listen, he's still Howard Stern, but the presence is different, and it does for someone like me at least, audio wise, changes the presentation a bit.
Well, what's he sound like? 1992 Howard Stern again before all that?
Not quite, but yeah, more like that. The old Howard Stern, where it's just different. And if you're a serious subscriber, you know what I'm talking about. Phil, you're a serious young gentleman, and
Thank you.
I wish you well in your house of lockdown, your isolation.
Oh, by the way, I found out our ranking in that Asian country you were talking about, eh? So we hit 100 in Vietnam.
Vietnam loves us, Fred.
I guess my dad's listening.
Vietnam loves Humble and Fred.
That's your dad and his harem.
That's right.
There's banana trees.
All right, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.